I have a pretty simple thought for you today, but it just so happens to also be a pretty big problem for Christianity, and one that I don't think I've ever really explained. I might have hinted at it, but I want to lay it out today. It won't take very long. Before I do, though, if you're hearing more of an echo or you're seeing less decor, I have some big news. We are moving. It's a pretty big move. So we are in the chaos mode of quickly trying to stage and sell this one. I'm cleaning things up. I'm already putting stuff in boxes. So we have a few weeks yet where it's going to look a little more bare. And then it'll be a few weeks of me recording from my new basement office in our new home. But eventually I hope to put together a studio. I know you never got to see this whole thing. I was so close. I had ordered new furniture. We were going to have the room split in two. Sharing Fire was going to be over there. Mindshift was going to be over here. That's the other thing. Sharing Fire is just going to go on pause until we're done with the move. But I am committing to 3 Mindshift videos a week during all of this chaos, or best that I can. So if you've thought about supporting the channel and haven't, this would be a great time. It is stressful. It is expensive. And again, I have to start over with a studio. Either way, thank you so much for being here. Let's get into today's thought. And it's this. Christianity, and I don't think this is controversial, seems to have a really big preference for faith instead of evidence. Now, we could get into all of the scriptures. There is so much. We could look at the example of Thomas and Jesus saying that it would be better to believe without evidence, so placing a clear hierarchy there. We could describe faith. We could talk about how it's better to believe than to see, how it's better to walk by faith than by sight, how Christians should keep believing even when it's hard, how they should keep trusting even when God seems silent, keep holding on when the answers don't come. This kind of speech is inundated within the scriptures themselves and within the religion at large. I think it's pretty dishonest if there is a Christian rebuttal that says, no, we don't have that kind of a preference on faith. Read your Bible. Now, if you have some other verses, then fine, now you have contradictions, deal with that. But don't try to tell me that there's not a clear desire of faith being the only thing that pleases God, not your intellectual ability to decipher which God is real based on evidence. But there's a tension here. It's actually twofold. The first part of the tension is that Christians will jump to evidence when all of the other more abstract things like faith, sincerity, personal experience, relationship, etc. fail. And the second part of the tension is why those things fail. They fail because they can be applied to all other religions. So if God wanted faith instead of evidence, or higher than evidence, whichever way you want to say it, then every false religion is actually playing by God's rules and preferences also. This is a problem for Christianity. And again, it probably seems obvious, but we're going to spell it out quickly. The first thing to understand, and believe it or not, this is a shock for many Christians, and it's this: faith is not unique to Christianity. The Muslim has faith also, as does the Mormon, as does the Hindu, as does the cult follower, the Scientologist, the doomsdayer, the believer in Bigfoot. All of these incorrect things utilize the same tool of faith. And if that's true, then faith cannot be the separator. It cannot be the indicator for truth. It explains why people believe, how people believe, why people maintain their belief or continue to believe, for sure. I'm not even knocking faith. There's something truly beautiful about the idea of it not being too easy, of having to take a leap, of having to rely on something greater than yourself. But what faith cannot do is tell us which religion is true. And it is often positioned as if it can, as if faith is somehow uniquely noble or righteous or true or telling in the religion of Christianity. And again, it's made worse by Christians in what they claim, because they don't just say you should have faith. Everybody says that. They say you should have faith in the correct thing. To me, faith then is an afterthought. And first you have to actually decipher what's true. But if you're taking it on faith, you see the dilemma here. And this is, again, I'm not strawmanning. This is like one of the most consistent answers you will get when you press a Christian on why they believe. How do they know? And despite the verses that tell them to have an actual account and be able to be ready to give that account, they usually fall back to, well, I just have faith. You just have to have faith. They know Jesus is Lord because they have faith. That's how the Muslim knows that Islam is true. The Mormon says they prayed about the Book of Mormon and felt a burning in their bosom that they took on faith. The Pentecostal talks about how they felt the Holy Spirit, taking that on faith. The Catholics have faith in the validity of church tradition and history. The Hindu has faith. They say they have experienced the divine. The New Age spiritualist will say that the universe confirmed it to them. Faith as a way of knowing. If all religions have this element of faith, then faith cannot be what differentiates the religion or helps us find the truth. And when you present this to a Christian, oftentimes they will say, well, it's different. My faith is different. Okay, fine, let's play. Different how? And we get into what the abstract term of faith was really collecting all along, because they might go from faith to sincerity. See, my faith is different because I'm sincere. I'm ready to die for my God. And you hear this a lot, and it's really this pompous, almost narcissistic kind of thinking that is small-minded. It is people who have been sheltered and enclosed in one particular system and have never met the outside world or cared to be actually curious, because as soon as you talk to a devout Hindu or Muslim or Mormon or anyone else who believes anything different than you, and you're willing to be honest, you'll see that they're just as sincere. And this gets shown in so many simple little ways, right? Like a lot of apologetics try to make that whole, well, the apostles wouldn't die for a lie. Sure they would. And Christians already believe that. Every time they hear about a suicide bomber for Islam or insert any other thing, they don't all of a sudden believe that that is true because someone died for it. They believe that person was incorrect. So not faith and not sincerity. Okay, so what's left? Sacrifice. Oh yeah, because no one else has ever sacrificed for what they believe except the Christian. Again, that is historically and culturally ignorant. Personal transformation then, Brandon. I know too many Christians that have been drunk, that have been poor, that have been down to their last whatever, and they cried out to God, even though they didn't believe him, because they're usually atheist in this situation, but they cry out to God, this specific God, Jesus, the one that they're culturally aware of. And they have hit rock bottom. So of course, whatever comes next, if it's not death, gets attributed to this religion. But ignorance, again, because that happens in all religions, in all belief systems. Okay, well, what about community? That's something special. Nope, it's not. Religion's good at community. Okay, well, how about spiritual experience? You can't take that away. There's only one true God. So only me, the Christian, can have this spiritual experience. Again, the naivety. It's the naivety to understand that it is a psychological response and that every human is capable of having the same psychological response, but to different stimuli. And that stimuli work for different people in different cultures because of how they were raised or what they were taught about their specific deity or religion. Yes, really. People who believe differently than you in different gods or different systems have the same kinds of what you call spiritual experiences, because it's a human phenomenon. So if we can show, and it's so easy, if you're willing to be honest as a Christian, that all of these things take place in all other religions, then what is left? What makes Christianity the correct faith, since that's what we started with? And when you play this game long enough and you really help people understand how the other things don't matter, they can't add up, they can't provide for truth, then the Christian jumps to evidence. Oh yeah, no, totally. I understand what you're saying, but Christianity, unlike all the other religions, has so much evidence. The only thing that could possibly answer for the data that we have, mainly from the Bible, is if Jesus was resurrected. Nothing else can help us understand the claim of the 500 who saw him, or what the apostles thought they saw, or the stone being rolled away, etc. We've looked at it all, and the actual best, simplest answer is that Jesus resurrected. And they'll do this for lots of things. Again, all of a sudden, evidence matters. Evidence becomes strong. Evidence is the differentiator between faiths. And that's wonderful. The problem is that many believers yo-yo between the two. If they get pushed on the abstract, they try to go to evidence. If they get pushed on evidence, they backtrack to the abstract. And many times they don't even see that they're doing it. And they just go to whichever way is more comfortable for them so they don't have to answer for the inconsistencies. But if evidence matters and you're honest, you're going to start to see a lot of problems within Christianity. See my last 500 and some videos, to which, without fail, the number one apologetic comment in every single one is not actually contending with what I have shown and telling me where I'm wrong and providing correct context. It is a plea in some fashion to faith. Listen, Brandon, sounds like you've thought about this a lot, but have you given it over to God? Okay, some interesting points there. Nothing that people haven't been dealing with for thousands of years. At some point, Brandon, you're just going to have to choose. Do you want to keep serving yourself, or are you ready to be humble and finally open up your heart to God? And on and on and on and on. Evidence matters, and you need to deal with this and contend with this, because if you do not, you have nothing else except what everybody else has for their religion. If you cannot prove that yours is actually true, you are running the same scheme that everybody else you accuse of running a scheme is doing. It's actually a really simple understanding, but again, I think a really big problem for Christianity. I think this is where Christians unknowingly trap themselves. If you want to tell me that there's good evidence for the resurrection, then that means there's such a thing as bad evidence. It also means that evidence matters. Again, those are two things you probably don't want to bring in to a conversation trying to prove the validity and historical reality of Christianity, but this is what I mean. You've trapped yourself a little bit. If you want to say there's a bunch of historical evidence, now you have to grant that historical evidence matters. So what are you going to do when we start talking about how there's no historical evidence for something as big as the Exodus? Or how Joshua's conquest clearly has all the dates wrong and not all of these places existed at the same time. I didn't want this video to be 10 examples for each of these points. I'm laying it out there. I understand I could be backing them up with claims better, but we can go into a few of these individually in future episodes. They'll say, well, the Bible is reliable. That's how we can know it's true. Okay, good. Reliability matters. Help me with these 1,000 contradictions then. Well, okay, no, hold on. Christianity explains things nothing else can, like morality, meaning, consciousness, the beginning of the universe. Oh, you mean like philosophy? It's cool. Get your mix in there. Let's discuss it. But if you think that it is unique in that it offers an answer for things, again, see every other religion and just, what it is to be human in general. As always, you just can't have your cake and eat it too. After seeing that the abstract gets blown up because it's everywhere, you can't go to evidence and then get upset when your evidence is unbelievably weak and straight up false and wrong in many cases, or where there's better evidence for some of the other false religions you don't believe in. One of the best things I've seen lately was actually Alex O'Connor and was it Trent Horn? Yeah, I think it was. And Alex starts off the debate with a really interesting angle. I'll link the video down below, where he compares the good, amazing evidence for the resurrection, even what Trent would agree is great evidence, and then shows that there's actually better evidence in each line of argumentation for Mormonism, comparing apples to apples, like really in the same fashion. And Trent's response was so weak, and I've meant to do a video on it because Alex actually didn't push back very much, which was fine. It might not have been what he was trying to do. He just wanted to lay out his case. But man, this is what I mean. If you're going to say evidence matters and Christianity has great evidence, but you're not going to believe the same kinds of evidences that other religions provide also, you're just making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And ultimately what we have here, and I'll kind of close out with this idea, is that faith is being used in two different ways. When Christianity wants to look intellectually serious, then faith is supported by the evidence. But when the evidence is clearly insufficient, faith becomes this virtue. And why? Precisely, exactly because it does not demand evidence. One of the definitions in the Bible of faith is that it is the assurance of things hoped for. Being sure of something just because you wished for it is the opposite of critical thinking, logic, or evidence. But it is part of Hebrew 11:1's definition of faith. So which is it? Is faith trust because of good reason, evidence? Or is faith belief beyond what reason can justify? Because I honestly just can't stand continuing to hear Christians say both out of the same mouth. depending on when it's situationally convenient for them. I keep asking for evidence and they say, we have evidence. But when I challenge the evidence, they say, you can't put God in a test tube. I ask, why is God hidden then? They say, because he wants you to have free will to find him by faith, not to force himself on you. But then I go back to even asking in the first place, but wait, why should I do all this? Why is Christianity reliable? Oh, because it has evidence. Circle. And trust me, when you're in the circle, that circle feels very persuasive. When you're outside the circle, it looks ridiculous. It looks like Christianity wants the prestige of being an intellectual, evidence-based religion, but also at the same time, the convenient excuse of faith whenever they need it, which is when all of that evidence so often fails. I wish you could see it as clearly as I do, the Christian saying, no, we have good reasons, but don't look too close. No, the evidence is here, but don't expect too much. There was another video that I have saved that I'm going to be doing a Tuesday reaction to, and it was essentially someone saying that the skeptic simply has too high of a bar for what they would consider evidence, where almost nothing could convince them. And that is just so fundamentally untrue. Just because Christianity has such lackluster evidence that it does not meet the required threshold doesn't mean that the skeptic is just being way too picky. You're asking us to believe that you know the one true faith that is a perfect, loving, just God that will send me to hell if I don't believe and or do and or think the right thing. Yeah, you're going to have to give me some better evidence and not get mad when your bad evidence doesn't hold up and I call it that. I could just give you 100 examples of the two-sided nature of this. God revealed himself. You can only find God with faith. Whoa, wait, which one is it? Because every answer you give, every other religion can give the same thing. Every religion can say, you know what, the divine doesn't have to bend to your will. It doesn't have to reveal itself to your skepticism. Every religion can just say, you need humility. Who are you to judge? How could you possibly compare to a God? Every religion can say you need to be spiritually open, or you need to seek more sincerely, or you just wanted to turn to your own ways. You need to stop relying on earthly wisdom. There is evidence there. Your heart is just closed. Every religion can say that. So when you give these bad excuses, these abstract answers, and this lackluster evidence, all you're doing is actually making excuses that we should all be open to all the other faiths you don't believe in, because they've given us the exact same reasons to. Thank you to my top tiers of support: my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, Chris, Greysteel, Gnarlywill, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn; my Humanist heroes: Chris, Craig, James, Jarrod, Kristi; my Atheist advocates: Aquitar, Caleb, Dakota, Dan, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Jeremy, Jugs, Julie, Malcom, Paul, Rege, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. If you enjoy Mindshift, would you consider joining these fine people? Thanks and have a great day.